Imagine you are standing on a scorching African savanna. The sun is beating down from a cloudless sky. You are completely exposed. You have no thick fur to protect your skin from the radiation. You have no sharp claws for defense. You have no fangs to bite back. You are not particularly fast. In fact, almost every predator around you could outrun you in a simple sprint. You look incredibly vulnerable, but you have a secret weapon hidden just under your skin. As you start to move across the hot dirt, water begins to bead all over your body. You are leaking fluid from millions of tiny holes. In the modern world, you would probably wipe this away in disgust. You would swipe chemical antiperspirants under your arms every morning to stop it. You would feel deeply embarrassed if wet patches showed through your shirt during a business meeting or a date. You might even avoid going outside just to prevent it from happening. But right here, in this ancient blistering heat, this leaking liquid is the most powerful evolutionary advantage on Earth. It is the exact reason you will survive to become the apex predator, while the giant cats and massive wolves will not. Which brings us to a very strange mystery. How did a bodily function we now find disgusting and try so hard to hide actually allow our ancestors to conquer the entire planet? When you look at the animal kingdom, it is full of incredible physical adaptations. Cheetahs have a highly flexible spine that acts like a spring for explosive speed. Elephants have massive thin ears filled with blood vessels to cool their blood in the wind. Dogs and wolves hang their tongues out and pant heavily to release heat from their lungs. Reptiles just hide under rocks until the sun goes down. But humans do something completely bizarre compared to the rest of nature. We ooze salty water from millions of tiny pores covering almost every single inch of our bodies. We are officially the sweatiest creatures on the entire planet. We have up to 5 million of these sweat glands. No other animal on Earth comes close to this massive number. If you really think about it, sweating profusely seems like a terrible idea for survival. Water is the most precious resource in the wild. It is hard to find. It is heavy to carry. Why would any animal evolve a mechanism to rapidly drain its own water supply in the middle of a hot, dry landscape? It feels like a massive biological design flaw. It seems like a fast track to dehydration and death. But this apparent flaw is actually an engineering marvel. It is a biological air conditioning system so incredibly efficient that it allowed early humans to do something no other animal could even attempt. We could run for hours in the very middle of the day, while the fastest predators on Earth were forced to lie down and rest in the shade. We were out jogging under the boiling sun. Millions of years ago, our early ancestors did not live in open fields. They lived in dense, dark forests. They were covered in thick hair, much like chimpanzees today. They spent their days climbing trees, eating fruit and chewing on leaves. The dense forest canopy provided a permanent umbrella of shade. The temperature on the forest floor was cool and manageable. But then, the climate of the Earth began to change drastically. The planet cooled down and the air became much drier. The massive, lush forests began to shrink and die off. In their place, vast and endless open grasslands began to spread. These were the new savannas. Suddenly, our ancestors faced a massive crisis. To find enough food, they had to leave the safety and the shade of the trees. They had to walk out into the open under the blazing, relentless sun. Having thick, dark fur in the open savanna is a death sentence. It is exactly like wearing a heavy winter coat inside a hot sauna. Your body traps all the heat, your internal temperature spikes rapidly, and your brain heats up very quickly. The mammalian brain is highly sensitive to heat. If it gets just a few degrees too hot, proteins begin to break down. You get confused, you collapse. And out on the savanna, if you collapse, you die. Our ancestors needed a way to dump heat away from their bodies, and they needed to do it fast. Evolution provided a very radical solution. Over hundreds of thousands of years, we slowly lost our thick coats of fur. We became the naked apes. But having bare skin alone is not enough to survive direct sunlight. The real magic happened just beneath the surface of that naked skin. We developed an incredibly high density of a very specific biological tool. They are called eccrine glands. Most animals have sweat glands, but they are usually a different type called apocrine glands. Apocrine glands produce an oily, thick fluid that foams up. Think of a horse running hard. It gets covered in a white lather. That oily sweat is thick and it actually traps some heat. It is not very efficient for long periods of time. Plus, animals only have these glands in a few patches, like their armpits or paws. But humans evolved millions of eccrine glands. These glands produce a fluid that is almost entirely pure water and a little bit of salt. It is thin and watery. When this water reaches the surface of your hot skin, it meets the air and it evaporates. The physics of evaporation dictate that as water turns into vapor, it pulls heat energy away from the surface it is resting on. It actively sucks the heat out of your skin. This cools the blood flowing through the veins just under the surface. This newly cooled blood is then pumped directly up to your head, acting like a coolant system for your engine. It keeps your highly sensitive brain perfectly safe from the heat of the sun. But surviving in the open savanna required more than just staying cool. It required a massive amount of calories. Plants, dry roots, and leftover scavenged bones were not enough to fuel our bodies and our growing brains. We needed fresh meat, we needed fat and protein. But early humans were incredibly weak and slow. We could not outrun a gazelle. We could not wrestle a wild pig. We could not ambush a zebra from the tall grass like a leopard could. We did not have the explosive speed required to be a traditional predator. We had to find a completely different, totally unconventional way to hunt for our food. This is exactly where our sweaty superpower unlocked a brand new survival strategy. It is known as persistence hunting. We realized that we did not need to be faster than our prey. We just needed to outlast them in the heat. Think about how a four-legged animal runs. When an antelope gallops, its front legs hit the ground and its chest compresses. When it leaps forward, its chest expands. Its breathing is physically locked to its running stride. It takes exactly one breath for every single stride. It cannot change this rhythm. Now, remember how animals cool down. They pant. They take short, fast, shallow breaths to move air over their wet tongues, but an animal cannot pant and gallop at the same time. The mechanics of running prevent the mechanics of panting. So, when an antelope sprints away from danger, its body temperature rises incredibly fast. After a short burst of extreme speed, it is burning up from the inside. It has to stop running. It has to find shade, stand still, and pant heavily to lower its core temperature back to a safe level. Researchers studying ancient human bones and modern hunter-gatherer tribes noticed a brilliant pattern. Humans broke the rules of the animal kingdom. Because we walk upright on two legs, our breathing is not tied to our footsteps. We can take deep breaths, short breaths, or any rhythm we want while we run. More importantly, we do not need to pant to cool down. We just sweat. Let us step back into that harsh reality and follow a hunt. It is early afternoon on the ancient savanna. This is the hottest, most brutal part of the entire day. The sun is at its absolute peak in the sky. The air is visibly shimmering with heat waves. The ground is hot enough to burn bare feet. This is the time when the lions, the leopards, and the hyenas are all fast asleep deep in the shade. They refuse to move in this temperature. But a small group of human hunters is wide awake. They are scanning the brush. They spot a large, healthy kudu resting under a solitary acacia tree. The hunters make a loud noise and step into the open. The kudu is terrified. It leaps up and bounds away. It is incredibly graceful and terrifyingly fast. In a matter of seconds, it is just a tiny speck of dust on the far horizon. The humans have lost the race instantly, but the hunters do not panic. They do not sprint. They simply start jogging at a steady, slow, rhythmic pace. They follow the broken twigs and the hoof prints left in the dry dirt. They jog for 2 miles, then 3 miles. Eventually they crest a small hill and find the Kudu again. It is standing under another tree. Its sides are heaving. It is panting heavily, desperately trying to cool its boiling blood. Before the animal can fully recover, the humans jog closer. The Kudu is forced to panic and run again. Another massive sprint. Another huge spike in its internal body temperature. The animal puts miles between itself and the hunters once more. But the humans just keep up their slow, steady jog. Their bare skin is completely covered in a sheen of sweat. The hot, dry wind catches the moisture. The water evaporates instantly, pulling the dangerous heat away from their muscles. Their internal temperature remains perfectly stable. Their brains remain cool and highly focused on the tracks. They carry water in hollowed-out gourds, taking small sips to replace what they sweat out. This cruel cycle repeats. Run, track, find, chase. 2 hours pass, then 3 hours, then 4. The brutal sun beats down on the open plains. By the 5th or 6th encounter, something shifts. The Kudu is completely broken. It cannot physically run another step. Its body has severely overheated. Its brain is shutting down from heat exhaustion. It simply stands there in the open grass, swaying on its feet. It turns and stares at the strange, hairless, dripping, wet creatures that are slowly jogging toward it. The hunt is over. The humans did not win because they were stronger. They did not win because they were faster. They won because they had the stamina to endure the sun. They won because they could sweat. This incredible biological ability changed the course of our history forever. Sweating allowed us to become persistence hunters. Persistence hunting provided a steady, reliable supply of highly nutritious meat. All of that rich fat and protein fueled a profound physical transformation. Because we were eating meat, our large, energy-heavy digestive tracts began to shrink. We did not need massive intestines to break down tough plant matter anymore. All of that freed up biological energy was redirected upward. Our brains grew massive. They doubled and then tripled in size. We used those huge, newly cooled brains to invent better tools. We mastered the control of fire. We developed complex spoken language to coordinate our hunts. We eventually learned how to plant seeds and domesticate animals. As our intelligence grew, our physical reliance on sweating began to change. When we invented throwing spears and bows and arrows, we no longer needed to run an animal to the point of absolute exhaustion. We could strike from a safe distance. The glorious age of the long run slowly faded into the past. We migrated out of the hot savannas and moved into much colder climates in Europe and Asia. In those freezing places, sweating was not a survival tool, it was a danger. So we hunted animals for their fur and started wearing heavy clothes. We built thick-walled shelters to hide from the sun and the weather. Our lives moved indoors. The greatest physical superpower of our entire species was pushed into the background of our daily existence. Today, our modern relationship with sweat is completely upside down. We view it as a gross inconvenience. We spend billions of dollars every year on products designed to clog our pores and stop the water from flowing. We complain bitterly when our clothes get damp during a short walk in the summer sun. We rush from air-conditioned houses to air-conditioned cars to air-conditioned offices. But try to think back to those ancient hunters jogging on the burning plains. They did not have razor-sharp fangs. They did not have crushing claws. They were the slow, naked underdogs of the animal kingdom. Yet they conquered the entire world, one single drop of water at a time. The next time you finish a hard workout or step out into the summer heat, and you feel that moisture start to bead on your forehead, remember what it really is. Do not be embarrassed by it. It is not just salty water. It is the liquid legacy of your survival. It is the forgotten superpower that made you human.